I believe we're godlike. I believe in a creator. I don't know how or why, like exactly it happened, but I have no doubt that we have a piece of God, let's say, or a piece of our creator in us. I think that's our intuition. Religious people call it the Holy Spirit. But there's no denying that we just get feelings sometimes about each other or about decisions that we're trying to make. And most of us, let's say most, a lot of us can tap into that intuition more than other people. Mm-hmm. But that's probably when you said, what's your philosophy, right? Are you in control of your life or is something else? And I just think it's really interesting that we probably do create our destiny more than we think we do, for better or worse. And that's where the law of attraction comes in, that when whatever you think about expands. If you think you're sick, or you're going to make yourself sick. If you think you're going to get cancer at 60 because all the family you've had died at cancer at 60, you're going to get it. Dr. Wayne Dyer talks about that a lot. Talks about, how we forward think. All right, so let's do religion.
Okay.
You are complex religiously. Explain.
Yes. So I believe in something called syncretism, which is taking the best parts of things that you have in other practices or schools of thought or philosophies or religions and bringing that into your own life and your own beliefs. We have our religious institutions. We all identify as a certain way religiously. And I think there's a lot more people nowadays that are identifying as agnostic or, atheist or
spiritual.
Whatever adjacent, and I respect that so much because they're challenging the status quo. And there's a thing as big religion, it's a business. And so a lot of people, I think, waking up to the institutions that have been and really asking ourselves if they're serving us long-term is a big part of that. So I regularly attend mosque, synagogue, mass. I love participating in religious discussions worldwide. And so when I say complex religiously, I'm conversant in discussions around God.
Because you've had exposure to a lot of them.
Because we lean into those. We lean into those things, and we're told not to talk about religion and politics. Well, guess what? Perfect society doesn't shy away from those types of discussions and leaning into things and acknowledging your own preconceptions, your own programming and ignorances and things like that. It takes some vulnerability and humility to do that. And I certainly don't have all the answers. I'm very passionate about what we call intelligent design. I have done a lot of research into, my particular emphasis is in the evolution of the nervous system and how did this incredible thing come to be. And so you look back 555 million years ago, in my mind, that is the creative engine that drove most of evolution as we have it. I don't believe in the prevailing theory of Darwinism. Neo-Darwinian evolution has so many holes in that theory, but yet it's held up just like our cancer treatments and our chiropractic, stuff. It's like, this is the status quo. If you disagree with Darwin, you're unintelligent, you're uninformed. That is not the case. There are some incredibly smart mathematicians, evolutionary biologists that are saying there is no way that we have as much information in the cell, in the DNA that we do, or in our nervous system coursing through our body every second of every day. That for me is the physical manifestation of that intelligence of God, of that organizing, creating energy. And so, some of my best friends are devout Muslim and were raised agnostic. My girlfriend of many years is from mainland China. And it's funny because when you ask me, that's philosophy. Philosophy for she and I became our code for religion. She would wonder what my philosophy was on this or that. And I realized that she's asking me, what do I believe about this, how this came to be, or what it means for us spiritually, metaphysically. And so that was what kind of led into a lot of those discussions was, philosophically, where do you stand on this? She means religiously, but we just never gave it that name.
Yeah, that's great. A few things on that. You mentioned how complex the nervous system is, and even some of these evolutionists that say there's just no way it could have happened by chance.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the popular buzz phrases these days is it takes more faith to be an atheist than it does to believe in a creator or a God, whatever you want to call the entity or thing or it or person that created all of us.
Yeah.
And I subscribe to that too. That's my evidence-based side of things.
Yeah.
I reluctantly call myself a deist, which believes really only in the fact that there has to be a creator because we see creation. We see the nervous system. We see the complexity of the human eye alone. All our veins and the blood, that's just us. And then you got the animal kingdom, and then you got the earth processes. Like the chance of all of that happening by chance, to me, is just astronomical. And I know the atheists, I'm sure, probably have some great arguments, and I'm not a debater. I don't care if people believe anything different. I've had my journey through religion and not religion and figuring things out on my own, and the deist thing is kind of where I fall. But yeah, I mean, there's just too much complexity in the natural world for me to think that it just literally happened by chance. And even if it did happen by chance, where did those molecules come from?
Yeah.
Where did the Big Bang come from? The stuff, the protoplasm in the Big Bang, where'd that come from?
Right.
I mean, things don't just appear out of nowhere.
We don't.
So to believe, and no offense to the atheists, we're all on our different paths. But I mean, for people who don't believe in a creator, again, it doesn't matter to me. I was married to an atheist. Didn't bother me in the least. The reason is we didn't argue about it. She never tried to convince me. I never tried to convince her. We lived in harmony. We had stuff we had in common, like our son.
Yeah.
And we were totally cool. And she's still an atheist to this day. She's been an atheist her whole life.
Yeah.
And I'm sure she's thought a lot about this stuff. It's totally fine. I'm one of those people who just don't care what other people think.
Yeah.
Like in the sense that you think what you want to think, and that's cool. But I think, again, just everything is so complex. That's the physical part. And then I already mentioned the intuition. I believe that's part of God, or that's part of the universe, or part of spirit, or however you want to phrase it.
Yeah.
Because that's the little voice in our head. You can't explain where that comes from. It's just there.
The fact that it's a voice that we don't identify as self, you're thinking about the voice in my head. It's something other than me. And there's a lot of philosophy out there. And I do resonate with some of that to a point where maybe it's just your brain calculating so much information in the background, and it comes up with a response that you feel is external to self because it happened so innately. You weren't aware of the logical process that got you to that intuition. That happens. I love studying the role of the pineal gland in neurology.
Is that the third eye?
That is the third eye, yeah. And that structure for me, that is the quintessential moment of life beginning, is on the 54th day after conception. That little pineal gland produces the first molecule of DMT. And that's, it's a psychoactive substance that our body creates naturally, but that's what's responsible for the beginning of personality, of dreams, of anything metaphysical. And they've detected higher than average levels of DMT in people who are having religious or spiritual experiences, especially, visions and some of the metaphysical things. Those are phenomena that I'm perfectly comfortable being rooted in the physical, tangible, scientific world. But you tend to look at those experiences through the lens of science. I look at science through the lens of those experiences. And I think that's a more enlightened way to live, because science only knows what it knows. Religion is okay with what we don't know and what we, take on faith. I identify as an objectivist. And so I very much believe my own rational, reasonable response to objective reality. I think there are truths that are just independent and permanent and unalterable. But talking to people who are informed about those things and debating, I love, discussing ideas. And I don't take it personally when somebody has a differing idea. It just gives me an opportunity to kind of see things through their lens. But yeah, that innate intelligence, we're not aware of any process in the known universe where order is increasingly organized into something that is functional, unless there's an intelligent being behind that. And so, we look at the complexity that is the human life, and you and I as deists would probably say, yes, somebody did this. Now, I'm not going to take the next step and say scientifically that means that this is why this supreme intelligence organized it that way. When you ascribe motives to that, or theological implications for that enters the realm of religion. But as a doctor of chiropractic and one of 6 people in the world that actually cares where our nervous system came from, I get really passionate about saying that there is an intelligent design that put all this into motion. And let's look for evidence of that, of where this stuff came from.
Yeah, well, and again, as deists, the evidence is right in front of us.
Yeah, we live it.
It's always been there.
We are it.
and on the intelligent design point, it's like you take a book or a painting, and you say, okay, well, how did this come about?
Yeah,
it's a bunch of words. There's paper, there's ink, photos.
Yeah,
it's a basic thing.
Yeah,
it's not nearly as complex as the brain.
Yeah,
or the nervous system.
Or what if
eye.
I tried to convince you now that a tree fell down and it landed on a squid and the ink shot out and it just no. And it gave you the cure for cancer. It's like, what are the odds of that happening? Can you think of how much intelligence had to go into something so simple as that? You're right. And if it's just a book, how much more complex are we? We're not aware of any structure in the known universe that is as complex, millimeter by millimeter, as the human nervous system is.
Yeah. And I guess the atheist would say, and again, I'm not bashing the atheist. Sure. Again, everyone's on their own path.
Yep.
They would say, well, the earth has always been here. Humanity has always been here. And that then, and again, not debating, but discussing.
Yeah.
That goes completely contrary to what we know as reality.
Yeah.
Reality says there is a creator or something gets created by a creator.
Mm-hmm.
So to have something that's always been here, there's no explanation for that. And maybe that's true. Maybe we always have been here, but we can't comprehend that because we haven't seen that on this planet.
Yeah.
We've never observed it. We can't replicate it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think it's interesting. I love talking about religion and politics.
I do too.
And philosophy.
All the things they tell you that you don't bring up with strangers, like those are my go-to points.
That's what my show's all about.
I love it. I really think that we need to be open to, I'm open to the idea of panspermia, that life came here from another planet somewhere in the cosmos. I have so many of the isms that I'm like, I'm a semi-pelagic soteriologist. I believe this about human salvation and the whole purpose of this journey in life and things like that. And really my profession is an extension of my belief of how our body organizes itself and continues to organize itself. And there's something innately intelligent about how we're put together that makes us want to survive and reproduce and pass on any wisdom that allows us to do those first two things more readily to the next generation of humans. And I love shows like this, concepts that we've been discussing where people are waking up and are anxious to expand their knowledge of ideas, but also how we implement those in our life to be more expansive, I guess, live more in abundance and less in the fear and guilt. Any system that manipulates people through fear and guilt, and religion has a long track record of doing that. Those are systems that I don't think are going to survive in the new world, because we need people who are confident in themselves and are comfortable with their godlike ability to heal diseases, to create another human life, and then to raise that life and do things that are worthwhile, engage in artistic and intellectual pursuits that are really fulfilling on the human scale. Especially moving into kind of a transhumanist agenda with AI and all that stuff. A lot of people are scared about the future. The only professions that are going to matter are the ones that make a difference in the human element. We have smarter computers than doctors that are going to give us diagnoses and prescriptions and things like that. What we don't have are humans who care about what they do and who are engaged in artistic pursuits that are going to make life better on the planet. So.
Well, and I love it. And I think of literally the dozens of things we talked about in the last couple hours. Really the brain space that it comes down to is we have more power than we think. Every one of us, if we choose to use it.
Right.
We don't have to use it. That's a free society. I'd rather rely on other people. That is totally fine.
Yeah.
But sending messages, it says, you're probably smarter than you think you are. You're stronger than you think you are. You're healthier than you think you are.
Right.
And as far as making your life better, whether it's psychological or physical, start with yourself. Learn from other people.
Yeah.
But, you have the ability to make things like that happen.